Lauren sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. Her hands gripped the old, tattered notebook she had found just days ago, but the words inside, the warning, were fading. Just like Michael, just like everyone before him. She had spent the past hour searching for something, anything, to prove he had existed. But he was gone, not just missing, erased. The framed wedding photos on the wall now showed only her, standing alone in front of the altar. The pictures from their vacation, just her, smiling at an empty beach. His shoes by the door? Gone. His clothes in the closet? Gone. Even the indentation on his side of the bed had vanished. Lauren clutched her head, fighting the pull. She could feel it happening. The house was taking him from her mind, piece by piece. She had a husband. She knew that much. She could still remember his voice, his laugh, the way he used to hold her hand absent-mindedly while watching TV. But his face, she couldn't picture it anymore. Tears ran down her cheeks. Number no, no, no. She ran to her phone, scrolling through her camera roll. Every photo where Michael should have been was empty. Every text message thread with his name was blank. Every trace of him gone. Her body trembled. Michael had never left, and now it was her turn. Lauren froze. A knock echoed through the house, slow, rhythmic. She turned toward the bedroom door, her stomach twisting. Then she heard his voice. M-U Mokwa G. Michael, or at least something that sounded like him. Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. This isn't real. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her hands over her ears. Lauren. It was gentle, familiar, so perfect, so exactly like him that for one fleeting second she wanted to believe. She wanted to open the door. She almost did. But then she saw the mirror, and she knew, because there was no shadow beneath the door, because Michael was gone, because Michael had never existed, only the house, only the hunger. The knocking grew louder, faster, more desperate. Lauren, please, Mokwaji, Jonglam Vai Voi An. Her body shook violently. The handle twisted. The door rattled against the frame. Then the laughter started, low at first, then growing, echoing from everywhere. She pressed her back against the wall, her fingers digging into her arms. You can't hide, Lauren. You were always going to stay. The house chose you. The laughter warped, shifting, turning into multiple voices. Michael, Emily, Cameron, Sarah. The voices of everyone who had ever lived here. The house had taken them. The house had erased them. And now it had chosen her. The notebook fell from her hands. She reached for it desperately, her fingers trembling. But the pages were blank. The words she had read, the desperate warnings, they were gone, as if no one had ever written them, as if she had imagined them, just like she had imagined Michael, just like she had imagined her own life before this house. Tears blurred her vision. It was too late. It had already begun. Her memories were fading. Michael, her family, her life before this house. Soon she wouldn't remember why she was afraid. Soon she wouldn't remember anything at all. The door creaked open. The room went dark, and Lauren was gone. Weeks later, the house was listed for sale again. A charming old home with history. A perfect place for a fresh start. A deal too good to be true. And when a new couple arrived to take the tour, the house watched. The cycle would begin again, because the house was alive, and it was always hungry. The house is patient. It waits, silent, watching. It doesn't care who walks through its doors, only that they do, only that they stay. And when they do, it feeds, one by one, until there is nothing left of them, until the world itself forgets they ever existed. No one remembers Lauren anymore, or Michael. No neighbors whisper about their sudden disappearance. No friends call to check on them. No police reports are filed, because in the eyes of the world, they were never here to begin with. The house has erased them, every trace of them. Photos have changed. Messages have vanished. Their names no longer exist in anyone's memory, not even in their own, because they are part of the house now. Just like Emily. Just like Cameron, just like Sarah, just like all the others before them, the ones who screamed, the ones who ran, the ones who tried to fight. But the house is always stronger. The house always wins. And now it waits for the next. The only thing it cannot erase, the only thing it leaves behind is the journal, a single battered notebook. It waits in a forgotten drawer, on a dusty shelf, beneath a loose floorboard, waiting to be found, waiting to whisper its warning. But the house allows it to stay because it knows. It knows that by the time its next victims read the words, it will already be too late. Because the house is alive. Because the house is hungry. Because the house never stops